Welcome to the 1987 NBA Draft.
My name is Joyce Szymanski, and I was the media relations intern for the Seattle SuperSonics for the 1986-87 season. When that draft came up, this was the last official duty I had as an intern before I went to the Chicago Bulls to work in their media relations office.
Here are excerpts of my conversation with Joyce later in this episode.
I always like to say that Michael got to play with me for a year at North Carolina. I think it really helped him.
Spectacular player from the beginning.
You can see right away Jordan was going to be a big-time scorer.
And showed what an impact he was going to have on the league.
This is NB88, celebrating the 30-year anniversary of Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls and the 1988 NBA season. Now here are your hosts, Adam Ryan and Aaron Steen.
Welcome to episode 1 of NB88, a brand new series covering the 1988 NBA season. Aaron, as always, thanks again for joining me, mate. How are you today?
A young man with dreams of greatness on the baseball diamond, possessing the burning desire that could get him there, and so on and so forth.
Rest in peace to Jay Thomas, sadly passed away in the last few years, the narrator of the magical Come Fly With Me.
The content of 87-88, this is a large portion of what made me fall in love with Jordan and the Bulls and basketball in general. I've been pretty excited about recapping this season in detail.
Yeah, I can't wait. And if you're new to the show, welcome. Hope you enjoy it. And if you're a regular listener, welcome back.
1987, pre-NBA Draft.
Let's just backtrack for a moment and head back to late April, the 27th to be precise. Just for a bit of context here, 53-year-old Bill Russell, as in the 5-time NBA MVP and winner of 11 titles in 13 seasons, signed a 7-year deal with the Sacramento Kings, which was effective as of June the 1st. Now, the plan, he was to coach for, according to the Philadelphia Inquirer, quote, 2 or 3 or 4 years, end quote, and then he'd transition into the role of president and GM with an option to buy part of the team. Now, Russell had been working as an announcer for both CBS and WTBS, and before that, he last coached a decade prior, leaving the Seattle SuperSonics after the 1977 NBA season, following mediocre, by his lofty standards, success in 4 seasons at the helm. Now, Seattle won a title just 2 years later, for what it's worth. Negotiations for the move to the Kings began back as far as February of 87. However, the deal wasn't announced until after Sacramento wrapped up a 29-53 campaign with Jerry Reynolds as interim coach. Now, would Bill's tenure in California be smooth sailing? Let's quickly mention some of the players whose careers ended following the 1987 NBA season. Of course, Dr. J, Julius Erving, Gus and Ray Williams, the brothers, Bill Walton, Scott Wedman, Gene Banks, Kyle Macy, Terrence Stansbury, great friend of the show, and David Thirdkill, just among some of the 50-plus people who pulled the pin after 1987, either by their own doing or otherwise.
We'll go into some more detail, especially on Gene Banks and how his NBA career came to an end. Moving into June 1987, Chocolate Thunder was a free agent and has expressed some interest in playing for the Bulls. Coach Doug Collins was a teammate of Darryl Dawkins in Philadelphia, and if Chicago were to give him a decent offer, he would take it.
Wow, that's fascinating to start with.
On June 18, Bob Sakamoto wrote, and I quote, "Michael Jordan is going to have some help real soon," end quote. Chicago has been talking trade with a number of teams for an accomplished scorer and have 2 picks in the first round of the NBA draft coming up in 4 days. The Bulls flew Central Arkansas's Scottie Pippen into town for a meeting, and such late interest, as in late before the draft, means they could very well use either of their 2 picks on him. Phoenix, who is expected to select Armand Gilliam at number 2, is looking to acquire another pick so they can also land Pippen. I love that we're talking about Scottie Pippen before he even starts his NBA career. It's fantastic.
Didn't he have a meteoric rise from, it's probably a story that most people have heard trotted out, equipment manager at one stage, started off as a lower level player at Central Arkansas and then became a star by the time he finished his college career. So, yeah, incredible turn of events there for him to change the whole course of his life.
So I'll go back a little bit. The Suns, who were expected to pick Armand Gilliam at number 2, were also looking to get another pick so they could land Scottie in the draft, who, as you mentioned just before, had gone from a late first round, early second round sleeper to a projected top 10 pick. The Bulls and Suns have been talking, and Chicago is interested in Suns forwards Larry Nance and Mike Sanders.
Very little footage of Pippen from Central Arkansas exists, and it'll be awesome to see some of these post-season tournaments or pre-draft camps and things that he must have taken part in. To see some of the raw footage of Pippen would just be fascinating.
On the 19th, Michael Jordan received 8 stitches to his head after being elbowed during a pickup game at his camp in North Carolina. The elbower was a high schooler named Fred Allen, who resembles MJ and appeared in a Wilson Sporting Goods ad with him.
Oh, how good's that? Great. Tidbit Central will be NB88, but this is a great one to start with.
Jerry Krause denied rumours, surprise, surprise, that they would send Charles Oakley and their 8th pick to Seattle for Tom Chambers and the number 5 pick.
Wow.
The Bulls also reportedly said no to an Oakley for Nance swap with Phoenix. Krause added to reporters that Oakley is off limits.
Incredible stuff early on, mate. Rumours flying left, right and centre. Just like Oakley's elbows.
Absolutely. The Suns were keen on Pippen, and they were also trying to trade to get Sacramento's number 6 pick, using big men William Bedford and Ed Pinckney as bait. The aforementioned Kings coach, Bill Russell, believes he can make a legitimate centre out of Bedford.
Courtesy of the Woodford County Journal of Eureka, Illinois, we learnt that Dave Corzine, and we're talking about the 19th of June here, Dave Corzine made an appearance at Dave Darnold's, I'm not sure if you even pronounced your name that way, sorry Dave if I got that wrong, Dave Darnold's team basketball camp for the 7th straight year. He instructed campers in rebounding and power play. Corzine spoke of his want to continue playing for the Bulls as his existing contract had ended and he was waiting for negotiations to recommence. David also appeared at the first week of Stan Albeck's 2 basketball camps. More on Stan later.
Dave Corzine, a NB Series first ballot Hall of Famer. You'll have to agree, Adam.
100%. Long live Dave, absolute legend.
1987 NBA Draft.
June 22nd, NBA Draft Day. The accompanying article in the Tribune was titled, Bulls May Be Working OT to Get Pippen. Minutes before the deadline for the trade period, the NBA were contacted about a possible trade. Sources say it may have been the Bulls who were involved. I have no comment, said Jerry Krause. We're working on several things right now.
Always tight-lipped.
The amount of work that would have been put in by all the teams prior to the draft, just imagine the what-ifs on some of the trades that didn't happen and what kind of an impact it would have had on the respective teams in the future.
Altering the NBA landscape for decades to come.
Completely, yeah.
Now, in terms of the draft itself, it was held in New York, as you said, on the 22nd of June. The San Antonio Spurs selected David Robinson from the United States Naval Academy with the number 1 pick. The Phoenix Suns picked UNLV's Armin Gilliam. Rest in peace. He passed away in 2011 at age 47, so gone way too young. He was number 2 pick. And 3rd pick went to the New Jersey Nets, and they selected great friend of the show, Ohio State Buckeyes great and future NBA champion of the Chicago Bulls, Dennis Hobson.
Beautiful.
Hobson did discuss his memories of this particular draft and much more in episode 7 of the show. The LA Clippers selected Reggie Williams of Georgetown with the 4th pick, which leads us to an intriguing pick at number 5.
Let's go now to the 5th pick in the NBA, and here's David Stern.
The Seattle SuperSonics select Scott Pippen of Central Arkansas.
Scott Pippen from the University of Central Arkansas. He's 21 years old, and that's right, folks, you probably have never heard of Scottie Pippen, but believe me, the NBA scouts heard about him. He'll be famous by tomorrow. Let's go to Charlie Neal.
Okay, thank you, Bob. I'm with Scottie Pippen right now. Scottie, you've put Central Arkansas on the map. You have to feel good about that.
Yeah, I feel real great. I think I gave the league, the ARC, a lot of publicity about me. Being selected high into the NBA as I did.
A lot of people didn't know about you. The NBA scouts did in the Aloha Classic. You had a great performance, also won the Slam Dunk Contest. A lot of people sitting out there may not know, as our analyst mentioned earlier, when you came into the college, you were 6'1", and you grew to 6'7". What happened through years that you gained those 6 inches?
I guess what you call late development, and I guess I just had to stick with it and work, and by me working every day trying to be ready and prefer for college, I end up coming out to be a pretty good player.
Now, I was unaware of this, but the origins of the Pippen pick can be traced back to November 12 of 1986, courtesy of the greatbasketballreference.com. This is taken verbatim from their website. Traded by the New York Knicks as a future 1987 first-round draft pick with a 1990 second-round draft pick, Steve Henson was later selected, to the Seattle SuperSonics for Gerald Henderson and a 1987 first-round pick, Mark Jackson was later selected. So, quite interesting there where you backtrack where the Pippen pick actually came from.
Man, the Knicks back in the 80s in particular, they love trading future picks.
And now we're about ready with the Chicago Bulls pick, and let's go to Commissioner David Stern.
The Chicago Bulls select Olden Polynice of the University of Virginia.
There's Olden Polynice. Now check in with Charlie Neal and meet Olden Polynice to have Charlie talk to him about how he looks forward to improving his life and joining the Chicago Bulls. Charlie?
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. Olden Polynice, you played last year in Italy. How did the year in Italy compare to what you're going to have to face in the NBA this coming season?
Well, over in Italy, it was really one of those type of situations where you had some NBA players, like Bob McAdoo and Gervin, but it's nothing like the NBA because the fact that we play mostly against all the Italian players, and over here you're going to be playing against a lot of great athletes. This is something I've been waiting for, and it's happening. I felt that I gained a lot by going over there.
Surprised going to Chicago? Happy you're going to be playing with Michael Jordan?
I am very happy because he's a great player, and you can learn a lot from a person like that. And I'm just, like Kenny Smith said earlier, it's just great to be in the league.
Okay, Olden Polynice going to the Chicago Bulls. Congratulations. Good luck to you. Now let's go back to Bob.
Let's see who they pick. Here's David Stern.
With the 10th pick, the Chicago Bulls select Horace Grant of Clemson.
Here comes Horace Grant of Clemson. This man is a strong post-up player. There's a stat I like about this young man is he never missed a game in his college career. They will love this young man in Chicago.
Now, you alluded to this earlier. The Sonics and Bulls arranged a draft day trade that would have implications affecting the NBA for the next decade plus.
Excuse me just a second, gentlemen. We're going to the podium now for a special announcement. You'll find out the same time we do. Back to the podium.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a trade involving first-round draft picks, and I'm going to ask Rod Thorne, the Vice President of Operations of the NBA, to report the trade to you.
The following trade has been consummated between Seattle and Chicago. Seattle trades to Chicago the rights to the 5th pick in the draft, Scott Pippen, in exchange for the rights to the 8th pick in the draft, Olden Polynice, plus a 1988 or 89 second, which is New York, so it will be going to Seattle from Chicago. And Seattle further has the option to exchange first-round draft picks in either 1988 or 1989 with Seattle, except if the picks are 1, 2, or 3. Thank you.
There's Rod Thorne with the announcement from the podium.
My name is Joyce Szymanski, and I was the media relations intern for the Seattle SuperSonics for the 1986-87 season.
This is an excerpt of my conversation with Joyce, who was very kind to join me to discuss her time working with the Seattle SuperSonics through the 1987 NBA Draft Day event. Shortly thereafter, taking up residence in Chicago, as fate would have it, to work with the Chicago Bulls media relations. How long at this stage had you been working for the Sonics, do you recall?
It was almost a full year at that point. I started my internship the September prior, from what I remember. That was the 86 to 87 season, which was a great season because that was the year that the Sonics ended up surprisingly going to the Western Conference Finals when they played the Lakers. In the first round, that's when the Sonics actually had to play at the University of Washington basketball arena, Hecka Pavilion, for their first round against Dallas. And then they surprisingly beat Dallas to move on to the next round. So it was a really cool time to be working with the Sonics for that season because we had the trio of Tom Chambers, Dale Ellis, and Xavier McDaniel sharing the load of the scoring, but it was a really, really cool and fun team to work with. I was one of the media relations interns at that point. Actually, when that draft came up, this was the last official duty I had as an intern before I went to the Chicago Bulls to work in their media relations office. For the draft in particular, we were working specifically with the media that were attending the draft party. So the Sonics put on a draft party for the fans. I think I remember it was at the Westin in Seattle. So it was a big ballroom, take over the ballroom, put up screens so that the fans could watch the broadcast of the draft. The fans will sit there. We had a whole section that was just media. So I was basically working with the media area. We would have a packet of all the potential draft picks available for the media to read through, so they'd have all the players' college statistics and all their information. And so for me, prior to the draft, was just getting those packets put together, get that ready, get the media seating all set up, and just being all prepared for whatever the media would need, specifically for the draft party and for the draft.
Just for a bit of context here, from the Chicago Tribune the following day on June 23rd, Bob Sakamoto wrote, and this is verbatim, Jerry Krause, Bulls GM, struck a conditional deal with Seattle at 2 a.m. on Monday, which was draft day, that allowed the Bulls to obtain Pippen. The SuperSonics had the 5th pick of the first round and selected Pippen for the Bulls. And with the 8th pick, the Bulls took ex-Virginia center Olden Polynice for the Sonics. So just with that as a background, do you remember much about how the crowd was reacting to some of the early picks and what the atmosphere was like just in general?
Yeah, those draft parties are interesting because I always find it funny that most of the fans basically boo every pick, that no matter what the team picks. And I remember when I was working for the Bulls, we used to have draft parties, and then they finally stopped because they were like, what's the point? Everyone's just going to boo whoever they pick. What I remember the most is just that when they picked Pippen, it was almost like 3 stages of sound. It was first silence, and then everyone was kind of mumbling, like, who was this person? And then they kind of got to the residual, like, oh, like throwing their hands up in the air. Oh, we just wasted this draft pick. That was basically the fans' reaction when they picked Pippen. And then later, when they announced the trade, all of a sudden the room got lively. They were like, oh, now that was smart. Good. They really knew what they were doing at this point. You know, you can see here, like they're all like, oh, this is good. That was a great draft. Great for the Sonics. So, it was interesting because I was looking at the clips on YouTube that you had sent me, and I just thought it was funny how it was actually kind of the same sound you would hear in those clips too in New York at the Felt Forum, where it was like when they picked Scottie, and then everyone's kind of like quiet, and then kind of mumbling, and then a little bit of booing. And it was like kind of the same thing. Everyone was trying to process the fact of like, who is this person, and why was he drafted 5th? That was interesting to see that same parallel with the sound.
Do you remember how soon you then started working for the Chicago franchise?
So, right, the draft was in June, and then I started working for the Bulls, I think it was in early August, maybe. We both made the move from Seattle to Chicago right around the same time. Also, the year I was with the Sonics was the year we hosted the NBA All-Star Game.
Yeah, Tom Chambers was MVP.
So that was another highlight of being with Seattle then. So that was a great thing just from a career move for me, is that I could talk to all the NBA, sent all their PR people in for that, as well as the NBA PR people. So I made a lot of great contacts and could network there, and that's kind of how that kind of all led to me getting into the Chicago Bulls position down the road. No, the Sonics were a great team. Of course, we've missed them a lot here in Seattle since they are no longer here, and hopefully we'll get another NBA team back here in Seattle, but because that's where I am now. I'm back in Seattle.
You're a champion. I really appreciate it, Joyce. That's
sure.
Really nice of you to take time out of your day and speak to some random guy in Australia.
Not a problem.
Thank you very much for adding the context, and look forward to chatting to you again in the future.
Okay, sounds great. Bye.
Thanks, Joyce. Bye. In a nutshell, here's the Bulls 87 draft, and I'll make this as quick as possible. Olden Polynice out of Virginia was picked at number 8 in round 1. Horace Grant of Clemson picked number 10, round 1. Ricky Winslow of Houston at number 28 in round 2. Tony White of Tennessee was at number 33 in round 2. John Fox of Millersville University of Pennsylvania at pick 56 in round 3. He did not play in the NBA. Great Jack Haley of UCLA was at pick number 79 in round 4. Anthony Wilson of LSU was at pick 102 in the 5th round. He did not play in the NBA. Doug Altenberger, I think that's how you pronounce it, from Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He was pick number 125 overall in the 6th round, and he did not play in the NBA, but is a name we will hear throughout this episode. Irvin Levy of Central Michigan, who was 148th overall in round 7, but also did not play in the NBA.
Yeah, just Levy, that one there.
I'm thinking about levying that one out. Of those picks, Ricky Winslow would be waived by the Bulls on November 9. He signed as a free agent with Milwaukee soon thereafter and would play 7 games in total before the Bucks waived him. Ricky's son, Justice Winslow, for what it's worth, is currently a member of the Miami Heat.
We like to avoid each other's notes, but I actually had a quick glance at yours earlier on this morning, and I didn't know that Ricky Winslow's son is Justice, who's currently playing in the NBA. That's a cool tidbit.
I wasn't aware of that either, so a great tidbit indeed. Now, Tony White played in the Bulls' first 2 games of this upcoming season, was waived before the Knicks picked him up. White played 12 games with New York and then was waived before being picked up on waivers by Golden State. He played 35 games with the Warriors, including a 24-point outing in 27 minutes at New Jersey in January of 1988. Golden State waived Tony before the 89 season commenced. Jack Haley, rest in peace, another one gone far too soon, died in 2015 at age 51. He would play 68 games, including playoffs, with the Bulls in 2 separate stints in Chicago, and he'd be a 9-year NBA veteran.
68 games as a player and babysitter, I believe.
The 1996 season, I believe he played 1 solitary game. It was the 72nd win of the Bulls. The last piece of the Bulls puzzle was a draft day deal with the San Antonio Spurs in a near reversal of a trade between the two teams 5 years to the day earlier. The Spurs traded A-Train to Chicago, Artis Gilmore, for a 1988 second-round pick. Shelton Jones was later selected. The aforementioned Reggie Williams, Tyrone Muggsy Bogues, 12th overall out of Wake Forest, and Reggie Lewis, 22nd overall out of Northeastern, were all first-round selections, and they helped lead Dunbar High School to a 59-0 record in their junior and senior years. Bogues' selection for Washington ensured that curiosity would be piqued as he joined the Bullets, the team with the league's tallest ever player, to that point, Manute Bol. Now, of the many tidbits I could mention, here's a beauty. The lowest drafted player to make the NBA from this draft, round 6, pick 127 overall, Sarunas Marciulionis.
With the ridiculous number of rounds that were in the draft going back into the 80s, something that I always used to do with the NBA Encyclopedia is look at the later rounds and see if I could notice anyone who actually played games. I quite enjoyed that, Adam. Round 6.
Great effort, and was a very serviceable player.
Very.
And played on the other Dream Team in 1992 as well. A final note on this massive day in the NBA. The Celtics' Kevin McHale underwent foot surgery as the draft was underway. He wasn't actually at the draft getting his cert. It was expected he could be ready to play for the opening of the regular season. However, he wouldn't lace them up until December the 1st.
On June 23rd in the Tribune, unlike the season before, the Bulls' draft choices in 1987 were cheered in Chicago as GM Jerry Krause's finest hour arrived with the drafting of forwards Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant. Detroit's Jack McCloskey said they had been trying desperately to move into the first round so they could draft Scottie, who McCloskey said will be a superstar. Wow.
Trader Jack.
In the Bulls draft room, 3 names were written on the blackboard: Pippen, Grant, and Ricky Winslow. Add to those 3 selections, they welcomed back centre Artis Gilmore from San Antonio for a conditional second-round pick, which you just mentioned. Jerry Krause said he took all draft prospects who visited Chicago out onto Michigan Avenue to show them this is where the city holds championship parades.
I love that.
Krause, who has been given little credit in turning the Bulls around after what he called, and I quote, cleaning out the garbage before the Cadillacs come in, end quote. Krause was also the only GM to heed NBA scout Marty Blake's advice to follow up on Pippen in the lead up to the draft.
Oh, that's fantastic stuff.
Coach Doug Collins said he can envision a day where Jordan, Pippen, Grant, Oakley and Corzine start for the Bulls.
Oh, man. This is really exciting. It's sad that I'm so excited to recap this season that happened the best part of 30 years ago.
The draft was broadcast via satellite at the Chicago Theatre, and the attendees were thrown several curveballs as the Pippen from Seattle trade wasn't announced until 10 minutes after the selection of Olden Polynice at number 5.
I'll just butt in for a second, mate. This is a perfect chance to let our listener know to follow the hashtag NB88. You can look at some fantastic bits and pieces from throughout this season. Check the hashtag to see a great photo, which is an alternate angle of the Olden Polynice and Scottie Pippen hat swap.
The draft day trade for Pippen was actually met with boos, in contrast to what was mentioned earlier on in the article about there being no boos. and the selection of Grant at 10 was met with applause. Fans were entertained pre-draft by JD and Red Kerr, who sang Chicago to them before the selection started.
I would have loved to have seen that. Just imagine how ramshackle that would be to hear Red Kerr belting out a song. Now, on the 23rd of June, Michael Jordan was scheduled to attend Stan Albeck's basketball camp.
Wow.
A great little side tidbit there. Albeck coached MJ's Bulls for the 1986 season before Chicago gave him the Lebanon sauce, and Stan then coached his alma mater, Bradley University, through to the 1991 NCAA season.
So Jordan was scheduled. Did he actually attend?
Don't know. Couldn't see any photos of it, but he was definitely in the lead-up. Suggested in another Illinois-based newspaper that he'd be making an appearance at the second of Stan's camps.
I wonder when that was arranged.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Good question.
June 24th, the first person that Scottie Pippen met in New York for the 1987 draft was Clemson's Horace Grant. It must have been an omen. 24 hours later, the two of them were wearing Bulls caps and becoming friends. Bob Sakamoto wrote in the Tribune on the 24th that Grant's exposure to ACC basketball at Clemson will help him adjust to the NBA and perhaps ease the pressure on fellow rookie Pippen. There seemed to be quite a bit of talk around draft time of the death of Len Bias just after the 1986 draft. Bulls owner Jerry Reinsdorf said that the team would not compromise integrity in order to acquire talent. Both rookies were asked questions about this at their first press conference, and both spoke very well when answering this and other questions.
They got their new uniforms from Bulls Vice President Jerry Krause, and then they said they look forward to playing in the good old Chicago Stadium.
After I got picked by Seattle, I was still waiting to be traded. But I think that, Chicago is a great franchise, and probably every player that's sitting out in the audience wants to be a part of the Bulls.
Well, when I visited here a couple of weeks ago, I fell in love with the city. Coach Collin and Mr. Krause were two of the nicest guys I ever met, and I think play for me.
Pippen, of course, became a Bull at yesterday's NBA college draft. Scottie was in New York, and that's where he met Grant, who was selected 5 rounds later, both looking forward to playing on the same team as Michael Jordan. And Michael says the feeling is mutual.
I never seen either one of them play, but I never see Charles Oakley play or heard of him either. So, you never really can base that on that. I'm anxious to get to camp to see what happens.
Bulls fans must like the pair as well. They sold 300 season tickets on the day, and one fan spent $20,000 chasing 24 season tickets.
Ooh, boy. Now on the 25th, airing on cable TV at 7 p.m. on this date, a show called Bullish on the Future. Chicago announcer Jim Durham hosts a special on the Bulls' 87 draft picks. Now on the 28th of June, Jordan scored 18 points, helping his UNC alumni team defeat Reggie Miller's UCLA alumni squad, 116-111. The game was dubbed the Collegiate Legends Classic and was played at Pauley Pavilion in Los Angeles. The aforementioned Jack Haley top scored with 18 points for UCLA.
Wow.
And Reggie had 17.
Moving into July 1st, Bob Sakamoto reported that a suspected Achilles strain for Geno Banks was diagnosed a ruptured Achilles by Dr. John Heffron, which will likely keep him out for the entire season. Geno said he shed a tear when given the news, which could even be career-threatening for the 28-year-old. He admitted he may have pushed himself too hard after the Bulls drafted fellow small forward Scottie Pippen, who was widely reported to be the team's starting small forward for the 87-88 season.
Wow, that's a pretty startling admission to make, that due to Pippen's arrival on the scene, Banks pushed himself to the point where he basically could have, well, perhaps did, end his career years ahead of time.
Banks would also be very disappointed to not be able to play with good friend Artis Gilmore. Banks has one more guaranteed year on his contract with the Bulls with a team option for the 88-89 season. On this day also, it was reported that the Bulls held a press conference to officially announce Artis Gilmore's return to the team. Gilmore was presented with his famous number 53 jersey at the press conference.
I'm pretty sure you've also got a photo of that press conference with the NBA88 hashtag that's appeared on Twitter at least.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so definitely worth checking these things out to accompany what we're chatting about today.
And also on this day, Michael Jordan was named to the NBA's all-interview team, with Dr. J, Kevin McHale, Magic Johnson, Robert Reed, and Doug Moe as coach.
There's some great personalities there. Robert Reed, I don't know a whole lot about him.
Same.
Interesting that he's made the all-interview team, so I might have to do a bit of digging there to see what else I can find about him going forwards.
On July 2nd, it was reported Olden Polynice joined an exclusive company of players selected by the Bulls in the first round, only to never play a second for them on court. This included Ralph Sampson and Maurice Lucas, which was a tidbit I didn't know.
Oh, there you go. I didn't know that either.
Bob Sakamoto spoke of some of the issues that Olden had during his college career, and that he also submitted his name too late for the 1986 draft and subsequently had to spend a season playing in Italy.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And that must have been back in the olden days.
That was Polynice.
Well done. Now, jumping ahead to July 13, the New York Knicks hired 34-year-old Rick Pitino as head coach, replacing Bob Hill, great friend of the show, who was fired a few months prior. Pitino was a Knicks assistant under Hubie Brown from 83 through 85. Rick left the college coaching ranks at Providence to make the leap back to the NBA. The Knicks had finished the 87 season with a 24-58 record, missing the playoffs for a third straight year. Now, in this case, Rick Pitino actually was walking back through that door.
On the 14th at Benedictine College, Michael Jordan helped NBC's Sports Fantasy Series fulfill 2 students' dreams when he played 16-year-old Eric Barber in wheelchair basketball and 19-year-old David White in a slam dunk competition. Barber had been wheelchair-bound since he was a toddler and was therefore very confident he could beat MJ.
That's fantastic stuff. That adds the context to the photo that our listener, I'm sure, has seen over the years where Jordan's actually in the wheelchair taking on the aforementioned Eric Barber.
Yeah, very nice.
Love it.
Michael Jordan was involved in a car accident on July 16 when his 1987 Corvette hit Sean McCarville's 1979 AMC Spirit. The 24-year-old Jordan was cited for failing to give way at the intersection and paid $44.50 appearance bond via credit card. Mr. McCarville received an autographed poster from Jordan saying, "To Sean, sorry about the accident."
That's great.
The accident happened out front of a Nike outlet store.
Oh, of course it did.
And whilst filling out the sheriff report, Jordan took refuge from fans by going into the store.
Oh, that's going to help matters.
Yeah, absolutely, because I'm sure that inside a Nike outlet, no one's going to bother him.
No, he'll go undercover, no doubt. That's classic.
Isn't that cool? And in a side tidbit, USA Basketball earned a semi-final spot at the World University Games in Zagreb, Yugoslavia, with a 93-83 win over Canada, paced by future Bull Iowa's BJ Armstrong and his 15 points.
I love it. Great to see BJ in action there. And I'll actually briefly mention those World University Games in a little while. In fact, let's do it right now. On the 18th of July, the United States team was defeated by a Drazen Petrovic-led Yugoslavian outfit, 100-85, in the gold medal match at the World University Games. Petro dropped 35 points on the Americans.
On the 24th, it was reported that there was talk of pressure from FIBA to make at least some professionals available for basketball in the Olympics in Barcelona in 1992.
Yeah, they'd probably be able to put together a pretty good team. This episode is brought to you by Multiplex Pro Basketball Fantasy Camp. Can you handle Jerry Sloan one-on-one? Slam dunk against Artis Gilmore? Work a fast break with John Paxson? A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to participate in the Multiplex Pro Basketball Fantasy Camp run by Chicago Bulls head coach Doug Collins. This 4-day, 3-night program is a unique opportunity to play hoops with some of the NBA's current and former greatest superstars. Participants will also receive instruction by players and Coach Collins in all aspects of the game. The camp runs September 9 through 12 and is open to adults at least 30 years of age. The camp includes 3 nights lodging at the luxurious Sheraton North Shore, all meals, official Bulls uniform and practice gear, an interview for television by Johnny Red Kerr, a videotape of your performance during your camp stay, 8x10-inch black and white photographs of you for autograph hounds, play in a championship series aired on cable television complete with referees, play-by-play announcers and fans, and much more. For further information and complete details, call the Multiplex at 498-4030 or stop by the club and ask for details and a brochure. Space is limited, so call today. Multiplex Pro Basketball Fantasy Camp, 491 Lake Cook Road, Lake Cook Plaza, Deerfield, Illinois, 60015. Phone 498-4030. Thanks again, Multiplex Pro Basketball Fantasy Camp. Deadline July 31.
Sponsored by Halo Advertising Specialties.
Note, this is not an actual sponsorship, it's purely for fun. Real sponsors welcomed.
It was announced on July 28 that the Bulls would play the LA Lakers in the Hall of Fame game to be played at the Springfield Civic Center on November 3rd. Moving into August on the 2nd, due to his Achilles tendon injury being sustained in a non-NBA sanctioned game, the Bulls informed River Banks that they would not be paying his guaranteed contract of $345,000 for the 87-88 NBA season.
Wow.
Banks said when the letter arrived from the law firm representing the Bulls, his heart sank.
Understandably so.
He said that he read the handwriting in having Pippen and Sellers. They have two guys who already play his position, so someone needed to be sacrificed.
Like, that is a massive amount of bank, no pun intended, to give up. $345,000 guaranteed with an option for the following season too, so, Blue met White in the second annual Midsummer Night's Magic game. Now, this was the first time the game was played at the Forum in Los Angeles. The 86 event was held at UCLA's Pauley Pavilion. Blue, courtesy of Isaiah Thomas's two made free throws with 1 second left, claimed victory in a defensive-minded battle, 180 to 178. As Thomas made the game-deciding free throws, Magic Johnson was beneath the basket on his knees, grabbing at his throat in a chokehold. As per Thomas Bonk of the LA Times, in his recap of the game, Magic's team got out to an early 2-0 lead during the player introductions. Now, the White squad was coached by Elgin Baylor. Blue were led by Bill Russell. And if you're wondering, MJ didn't play in this game. He'd first play in the event in 1988.
Wonder why. Maybe he was busy down in North Carolina with his own camp, and also he had the alumni game too that he played in.
Yeah, I think he was also still hiding in that Nike outlet.
Absolutely. On July 4th, with 3 months still to go, the Bulls have already surpassed their season ticket record of 6,710 set the previous season. 8,700 season tickets have already been sold for the upcoming 87-88 campaign.
That's excellent. It would have been great had they actually sold 87-88 season tickets.
Oh my. If I had had any idea what I was doing, I actually just would have made that up.
You should have. I would have believed it and said, that is phenomenal.
87-88 season tickets. Anyway.
Oh well.
The Charles Baker Summer League suspended play after Bulls forward Geno Banks had been suspended without pay by the team after rupturing his Achilles tendon.
Wow.
League organiser Sonny Hill added he may sue the Bulls and inform Jerry Krause and the NBA of the possible suit. Not like a pinstripe suit, but the lawsuit, as he feels that denying Banks his full salary is telling his league that after 28 years of NBA players participating, that the NBA wants no association with them. Surprise, surprise, Jerry Krause had no comment.
He remained tight-lipped. That's really good information there. I had no idea about how this injury came about. Now, I'm compelled to add here that in the October 4 edition of the Atlanta Constitution, Jeff Denberg's Inside the NBA column featured the following tidbit referring to the early August wedding of Manute Bol.
Wow.
Quote, the 7'7" bullet was wed in Sudan. New wife Atong was introduced to 150 people at a September reception in Maryland. Among the tunes played, Walk Like an Egyptian.
That's amazing.
Atong, incidentally, is pregnant with a minute or minutia Bol. End quote.
It's also an unconfirmed report that Minute blocked 17 shots during the wedding reception.
Oh, I love it. How good's that? I don't know if Jeff Denberg is actually making some of that up, but either way.
That's amazing. Walk like an Egyptian. That's almost the tidbit of the show.
Tell you what, it's going to be hard to beat that, but we'll see. It's early days.
Yep. Hopefully, we can beat it, but it'll be like a carrot that bangles out there in front of us.
Well done. The Bengals.
Bengals. Okay.
I get it. Absolutely, I get it. Don't undersell my appreciation for wordplay. That was fantastic.
August 6th, it was announced that Johnny Red Kerr had signed on for 3 more years as Bulls TV and radio analyst. August 11, Team Jordan are planning to open the first Air Jordan apparel store in Charlotte, North Carolina, with another plan for Chicago at a later date. August 15, free agent Ralph Sampson expressed his interest in playing with Michael Jordan in Chicago. Though with the acquisition of Artis Gilmore to play centre, the Bulls said they no longer had any interest in picking up Sampson, so take that, Ralph, whom they actually courted after he initially failed to come to an agreement with the Houston Rockets.
Yeah, I think you mentioned late in the NBA 87 series about Houston's eventual re-signing of Ralph Sampson. He signed a massive deal to stay with the Rockets, and that hamstrung them for the best part of 6 years, I think, from memory.
Yeah, it was quite surprising after reading the breakdown in communication between the two sides.
Absolutely.
On August 26th, VP of Sales and Marketing Steve Schoenwald indicated that the 88-89 season could be the first to have a waiting list for Bull season tickets. He can see the team selling 13,000 to 14,000 season tickets for the 88-89 season, which would be the limit, with the team wanting game day sales to be available to the public as well. And the expanded, and I quote, Jack Nicholson section at courtside for $100 a seat has already sold out.
Wow, you're looking back at that now, $100 for courtside seats to watch the 87-88 Bulls. My goodness, sign me up in a heartbeat. Now, moving to September the 5th, as news was scattered throughout this off-season, Oregon's Statesman Journal reported that former Trailblazer and 1980 All-Star Kermit Washington, whose last game was January 20 of 1982, due to back injuries he retired, was looking to make an NBA comeback. He would be turning 36 years of age on September the 17th. September 7, reports began to circulate that Utah's Karl Malone would take his talents to Italy if the Jazz didn't pay him what he's worth. Now, I had no idea about this. Did you know that Malone was talking about going overseas to play?
I had no idea.
He had recently travelled to Milan to check out an Italian Pro League, and the mailman averaged 21.7 points and 10.4 rebounds in 87, his second year in the NBA. Newspapers suggested that Malone and his agent were seeking a 10-year deal worth a reported $14 million.
The length of some of these deals in the 80s were extraordinary.
It is, and I guess you look back to Magic Johnson, he got a 25-year deal for like $25 million.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's an exception rather than the rule. Now, said Malone, quote, "I know every player hollers, trade me, but this is very simple. I'm not going to play for what the Utah Jazz have offered. That's not a threat, that's a promise," end quote.
Wow.
Now, in response to Malone's request, Jazz president Dave Checketts said, quote, "That's the silliest thing I've ever heard. I've had every agent in the world use that one. That's not even a good threat," end quote. So things are starting to get a bit rough there in the off-season for the mailman.
Stick that in your mailbag and smoke it, Carl.
Hello to Carl if you're listening.
On September 10, in August, the NBA announced that the salary cap would be increased from $4.945 million to $6.164 million, increasing the average player salary from $440,000 to $510,000. Now, just to paint a picture for you, 31 years later, the salary cap for an NBA team sits at $101,900,000.
That is absolutely staggering. On September 16, Karl Malone's agent said that due to negotiations with the Jazz progressing well...
Really?
Yeah. They had turned down a one-year offer for Karl to play in Italy. In unconfirmed reports, the mailman wanted to show his appreciation to the Italians by changing his name by deed poll to Karl Milan.
Come on. September 25th. Coach Doug Collins had signed on with Channel 7, not Channel 7 Australia, I don't think so anyway, to co-host their Sunday night sports final in January of 1988. On the 28th, Bob Sakamoto reported that the Bulls were in talks with head coach Doug Collins, or should I say with Channel 7's Doug Collins, for a contract extension. Collins has one more guaranteed year, then a team option for the 88-89 season. And the following day, the extension was reported in the Tribune that would guarantee Collins $200,000 annual contract through the 89-90 season. He would become the first coach in team history to get a guaranteed 4-year contract.
Wow.
Gene Banks' attorney and the Bulls came to a compromise on his contract after Banks injured himself in an NBA unsanctioned game. The Bulls threatened to not pay Banks his $345,000 salary for the upcoming season, but settled on $245,000 with River Gino Robin Banks, thus ending the Gene Banks era.
It's been a fun ride, Gino. Thanks for joining us. / we joined you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for everything.
Brad Sellers had undergone hernia surgery the previous week, and trainer Mark Feil expected him to return for training camp on October 9. And on October 1st, the Bulls' top assistant coach, Gene Littles, resigned from the team to seek a role on another team with the upcoming expansion teams in Miami and Charlotte expected targets. He is ideally looking for an executive position and doesn't see an opportunity opening in Chicago after Billy McKinney's promotion.
Interesting.
Also reported on this day, rookies begin two-a-day practices on October 5th and the veterans on October 9. October 1 also represented the first day that 1987 draft picks can be signed to contracts, with work across the weekend being put in to get Pippen and Grant signed.
I love this sort of information. Also on this date, October 1, the Houston Rockets signed World B as a free agent. Plus, Karl Malone inked a 6-year, $6 million deal with the Utah Jazz. It was the largest deal to that point in the team's history. October 5, Kermit Washington's comeback attempt ended. The Statesman Journal reported that the Blazers placed Kermit on the, quote, physically unable to perform list, end quote. That's one hell of a list.
Wow.
He had been participating in Portland's rookie camp. This will not be the last time we hear Kermit's name.
The unsigned Scottie Pippen was at rookie camp, which was unusual to see, with Scottie's agent wanting him there, his agent being Jimmy Sexton. Horace Grant, also unsigned, was out of town. Indications were that the talks between the Bulls and Pippen's people were going smoother than with Grant's. On October 6, Bulls fans were lined up at Chicago Stadium on October 3rd from 4 a.m. to purchase single-game tickets when they became available.
Incredible stuff. The early bird catches the worm, I suppose. Although Dennis actually wasn't playing for the Bulls at that stage.
Tickets for the Lakers game were sold out by 2 p.m. Ticket manager Joe O'Neill said it was the team's best first day of sales ever. On October 7, Michael Jordan signed a record 6-year, $1 million deal with Wilson Sporting Goods. Former Bull Quinton Daly and John Lucas were speakers at a 3-day rookie orientation on life as a professional athlete. Q and Lucas had their personal battles with drugs during their careers, and the article studied the bleeding obvious in saying the pair told the incoming rookies to steer clear of drugs.
Unfortunately, they had to learn the hard way, but good to see they were still trying to get their lives back on track by doing this.
Former assistant Gene Littles was named Director of Player Personnel for the expansion Charlotte Hornets also.
Good stuff. Now, opting to play in Italy for the 1987 season, Jeff Lamp's NBA career was switched back on as he signed with the LA Lakers as a veteran free agent. Now, I clearly only included that in the notes so I could say another stupid joke about turning back on Lamps.
On October 8th, 3 days into Bulls rookie camp, Scottie Pippen left a smile on the face of GM Jerry Krause and got the approval of Doug Collins after dunking on Michael Jordan during a scrimmage.
Oh, my.
Imagine seeing that.
That would be fantastic. I wonder if it exists. Well, who knows, but that would be fascinating to watch.
Brad Sellers said it will be a battle to secure the starting small forward because Scottie Pippen, and I quote, can do a lot, end quote. Free agent deity Corzine is confident of signing a deal before team camp opens on Friday the 9th. A 4-year deal, 2 guaranteed with 2 years as a team option, is the expected outcome for Corzine at a figure similar to last season's $710,000.
I love it. Anytime we can get a Dave Corzine mention is a good time.
The Bulls interviewed Phil Jackson for the assistant role left open by Gene Littles. Doug Collins said that John Buck would be the only bench assistant this season, with Tex Winter and the new assistant doing the scouting. The Bulls have also previously interviewed Don Buse, an assistant with Sacramento.
The Zen Master is on the horizon.
And the team was also expected to sign second-round picks Ricky Winslow and Tony White on the 8th.
Now, on this date as well, Jordan said, quote, I'm really psyched about getting the season going. Chicago has shown some foundation with the signing. I anticipate him, Coach Collins, being around for a long time, end quote. Speaking about Winslow and White after playing with them in a scrimmage, quote, they're going to help us, they're talented, they work hard, and they have a good attitude, end quote.
Make no mistake, for all the flowery words in the article, MJ would have been ripping them to shreds. Ripping them to shreds during practice.
I'd love to hear some of this behind-the-scenes stuff. As we record this, I've been in contact with Ricky Winslow, but I haven't got the affirmative. I'm trying to reach out to Tony White as well. So if by some miracle somebody who knows either gentleman can help lure them onto the show, please do help us out.
Chicago Bulls 1987-88 training camp.
On October 9, Michael Jordan told the Tribune that he was looking forward to a competitive training camp this year, more so than in recent years. Jordan said, no one has a guaranteed position. Well, maybe some, he added with a smile.
And I can imagine the sort of smile that would go across his face after saying that.
The related article then went through the position battle as training camp unfolds. Sellers versus Pippen. Brad has put on extra muscle to get his weight up to 227 pounds and also had hernia surgery 3 weeks prior. Maybe went a little heavy on the lifting, I would have thought.
Yeah, true.
Threet versus Tony White versus Air Petey versus Doug Altenberger versus Alston Turner. It figures to be Jordan, Paxson, and probably friend of the show, Threet, for 3 of the 4 guard spots. Alston Turner becomes a free agent if the Bulls don't re-sign him on October 15.
Now, if they don't actually re-sign Alston, that would be certainly a Turner event.
You idiot.
I've used that probably 4 or 5 times, and it's fell flat every time.
Corzine versus Gilmore. Corzine has just come to terms on a 2-year deal with a team option 3rd year for $756,000 per season and is coming to camp 15 pounds lighter.
Wow. And his wallet has now become 15 pounds heavier.
It's been offset by the cash. Oakley versus Grant. Horace wasn't in camp yet, as his deal had not been signed. Oakley added that his only competition for the starting power forward spot was Mike Brown.
Friend of the show. Great friend of the show, Mike Brown.
October 10, the Bulls interviewed Butch Beard for the vacant assistant role. They also seemed happy with Phil Jackson after speaking to him earlier in the week. It was then announced the following day in the Tribune that Phil Jackson had been hired to fill the spot.
This is fantastic just to hear about this lead up and build to what would ultimately become the championship Bulls.
In the Tribune, as we got closer and closer to training camp and the start of the season, the amount of Bulls tidbits in the paper, they ramped it right up and it was fantastic.
Love this sort of stuff.
On October 12, after looking like he was heading home for the weekend without a deal, Scottie Pippen and Jimmy Sexton will be in town over the weekend as Pippen's contract negotiations appear to be almost done. Bob Sakamoto said after 3 days of practice, Gilmore, Paxson, friend of the show Threet, and Corzine all looked good, and MJ was his usual dominant self. The Bulls had their annual golf outing at Northbrook's Mission Hills, and the team didn't escape without casualties. Steve Shumwald walked into Michael Jordan's swing plane and copped a club head in the face, and Brett Sellers sliced the ball into nearby houses.
Oh, that's great. I remember reading through my research as well about this golf day, so nasty stuff if you get too close to Jordan swinging the clubs.
Now, I didn't want to milk the minutiae, but the Dairy Nutrition Council is going to use John Macbeth Paxson as its poster boy for an upcoming advertising campaign. John Paxson spoke of his new confidence and was reassured of his place in the NBA after having his best season as a pro last year. He started the last 64 games for the Bulls and finished with averages of 11.3 points, 5.7 assists and only 1.3 turnovers, which ranked him first among starting point guards in assist-to-turnover ratio.
There's dairy an episode where we don't mention John Paxson, so I'm glad to see he gets another mention here, mate.
Doug Collins has urged Pax to look for his own shot and even told him he wants him to miss at least 5 shots per game. And Jordan has told the media that if they trade John Paxson, they better trade me too.
Wow.
This is the final year of Paxson's deal that will pay him $200,000.
Now, that's a steal to have Paxson at that money.
Mm.
And, of course, Jordan was probably true to his word there for the next 4 or 5 seasons because, of course, Paxson was a linchpin in the Bulls' early 90s seasons. But I don't want to jump the gun there and send off any spoiler alerts.
Scottie Pippen is due to make his training camp debut on October 14, with his contract expected to be finalised the night before. Negotiations with Team Horace had not progressed further at this point. Also on this day, the Bulls cut 5th round pick Anthony Wilson on the 14th and 7th rounder Irvin Levy on the 15th. October 15, Scottie Pippen signed a unique 6-year deal with the Chicago Bulls, 4 guaranteed with 2 option years. This is the deal that Sam Smith spoke about in the Jordan Rules, where Pippen, wanting security, signed the deal only to feel underpaid towards the end of the contract as NBA salaries went up across the 6-year period. Jerry Krause apparently told Pippen at the time not to sign the long deal because he would regret it in the end, which I guess he did.
Great friend of the show, Sam Smith, of course, mate. 2-time guest. Hello to Sam if you're listening.
In another unique twist, the money after the first season will be earning interest in an investment, all part of the deal that was negotiated by Jerry Reinsdorf and Jerry Krause. Jimmy Sexton added that the pair were the best front office he had dealt with across the sports he has clients in.
Yeah, that is a unique twist.
The delay in his negotiations meant Pippen missed the first 9 practices of training camp. On to October 16, Michael Jordan was only to be the 9th pro basketball player to be added to the World Book Encyclopedia.
Yeah, I came across that as well.
Chicago Bulls 1987-88 preseason games.
October 16th, the Bulls preseason got underway. Utah at Chicago, in front of 15,391 fans in the Bulls' only preseason game at the stadium. The Bulls had a easy victory, 123-98, and went to 1-0 in the preseason, of course. Now, for Chicago, Jordan had 30 points in 23 minutes. Pippen had 17 points in his first NBA game, and great friend of the show, Mike Brown, 15 points. Charles Oakley had 10 points and 11 boards. For Utah, Karl Malone had 22 points. Kerry Scurry had 17 points. Mel Turpin and John Stockton had 13 points apiece.
Kerry Scurry, no relation to Steph Curry?
I don't believe so, no. Or Harry Carey. Or Skip Carey.
Wayne Carey.
The duck.
In the recap for this game, Scottie Pippen, and I quote, "I've never played in front of so many people before," end quote. This coming from Pippen, who had never attended an NBA game before playing in this exhibition game.
Wow.
The Bulls led 63-43 at the half with Jordan's 20 points. Pippen said he wanted to come out and show the crowd why everyone was so high on him before the draft.
And there's a great photo as well that you uncovered through research for this series of Pippen's first game. That, I believe, has also been tweeted out with the NB88 hashtag.
Correct.
Now, moving on to the second game for the Bulls in their preseason, it was the very next day. Chicago versus Utah at Civic Arena in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in front of 13,280. Now, just to clarify here, a majority of the Bulls games were actually on neutral courts, which was quite interesting, so you'll hear a bit of that as we go through the rest of these recaps. The Jazz held on to win 106-96, and the Bulls moved to 1-1 in the preseason. For Chicago, Jordan had 26 points in 32 minutes on just 3 of 13 from the field, and he hit 20 of 22 free throws. Pippen had 17 points, and Charles Oakley had 10 points and 12 boards. For Utah, Stockton had 18 points and 8 assists. The Milan man had 17 points, and Kerry Scurry, another great game from him, 16 points, 12 of which came in the fourth quarter.
Come on, love it. Love it. The Bulls went to Pittsburgh without Dave Corzine and Artis Gilmore, leaving Mike Brown and Charles Oakley to deal with Mark Eaton, Darryl Dawkins, Karl Malone, and Dinabel Turpin. Corzine was told to stay in Chicago after getting poked in the eye in the first preseason game. They may have also went without their enthusiasm, wrote Bob Sacramento. Asked post-game if there was anything that he liked about the game, Doug Collins replied, "When the game was over." Scottie Pippen had 17 on 5 for 13 shooting. The Bulls shot just 38% overall. Chicago trailed 100-96 with a minute to go before a Karl Malone basket put them away. On to October 21st, the odds and ends detailed Lakers coach Pat Riley is a fan of the direction that the Bulls are headed. He said that the Bulls were on the threshold of joining Detroit and Atlanta and added the addition of the in-shape Artis Gilmore was an inspired move.
Okay.
This day's paper also detailed the fast start for Scottie Pippen and the delayed start to Horace Grant's career with the Bulls. Pippen had scored 17 in each of the Bulls' first 2 games, whilst Team Grant and the Bulls were still at a standstill on a deal for the rookie. The Bulls wanted Horace, signing for a whopping 6 years, 4 guaranteed with 2 option years, and Horace's people only want a 4-year deal.
In terms of the contract negotiations for Horace, you'd certainly take nothing for granted, that's for sure.
You idiot. Grant's agent, Paul Johnson, says a 6-year commitment will keep Horace out of the race for the NBA's ever-increasing salary cap at the back end of the deal.
Isn't it fascinating, given what we know about what transpired with Horace Grant's contract to a degree, but certainly Scottie Pippen. Pippen signed pretty quickly, relatively speaking, to become a Bull, but still wanted to get a few extra years, and Grant was more of a holdout, yet Pippen's contract was the one that ended up costing him many millions of dollars going forwards.
I think that a friend of the show, Sam Smith, mentioned in the Jordan rules that the Scottie's own personal insecurities is the reason why he signed so quickly and also signed the extra long deal to get the extra guaranteed money.
On October 21, Chicago at Denver in front of 8,009 at McNichols Arena saw the Nuggets hold on for a 106-99 victory. The Bulls dropped to 1-2 in the preseason. Jordan had 19 points and 5 rebounds. Pippen had another good game, 14 points. Great friend of the show, Seattle Threet, 12 points. And Charles Oakley, 5 points and 10 rebounds. For Denver, Alex English, future Hall of Famer, had 26 points on 13 of 18 field goals. Fat Lever had 22 points. And Blair Rasmussen. I think it's Rasmussen. We'll go with Blair, scored 16 points.
Literally in 29 years of following the game, I've ever heard it pronounced Rasmussen.
I reckon it could be Rasmussen.
Okay.
I'll just go out on a limb and say it's Rasmussen. If I'm wrong, then next episode, it'll be Rasmussen for all time. Now, a typo in the Chicago Tribune listed Lafayette Lever as, quote, Fats Lever.
Wow.
End quote.
Just another domino to fall in the great tidbits.
Oh, you beat me to it.
At this point, Horace Grant was also the only unsigned rookie remaining, as Reggie Williams signed a multi-year deal with the Clippers on this day. On the 23rd first rounder, Horace Grant signed a 4-year, $1.8 million deal with the Bulls and was finally able to join the team for their exhibition season. GM Jerry Krause said he expects Horace will see game time over the coming weekend against the Mavericks in Dallas and against the Suns in Las Vegas.
On the 23rd of October, Chicago at Dallas, in front of 17,007 at Reunion Arena, saw the Bulls have a 3-point win, 112-109, and improved to 2-2 in the preseason. Jordan had 34 points on 14 of 22 from the field. Oakley had 18 points and 7 boards, and Seattle Threet 9 assists. For Dallas, Mark Aguirre had 34 points, Derek Harper 23 points and 14 assists, Rolando Blackman 16 points, great friend of the show, of course, and Roy Tarpley, rest in peace, 15 points. After an Aguirre layup, the Mavs trailed 110-109 with 29 seconds left. However, 2 Charles Oakley free throws with 5 seconds remaining and a Tony White steal sealed the game for the Bulls.
Doug Collins was very upbeat about the Bulls' win in Dallas in front of a capacity crowd, despite it being an exhibition game. Jordan scored 34 and Pippen had 8 points, 3 rebounds and 4 assists in 18 minutes. Horace Grant saw his first action in a Bulls uniform, scoring 2 points in 7 minutes.
Good stuff there. And on the 24th of October, Chicago versus Phoenix in front of 11,852 in Las Vegas, Nevada, saw the Suns have a 90-87 victory and the Bulls dropped to 2-3. For Chicago, Jordan had 28 points and 11 boards, Pippen 20 points and 6 rebounds, and Tony White 10 points on 5 of 7 from the field. For Phoenix, Armin Gilliam, who was a star at UNLV, had 19 points and 11 boards, Walter Davis 12 points and 8 assists, and Buda, James Edwards, future Chicago Bull, of course, 10 points and 7 rebounds. Now, the Arizona Republic's recap of this game said it all. Quote, the biggest play of an otherwise forgettable exhibition between the Suns and the Chicago Bulls was the Gorillas' impersonation of Tark, end quote, and referring to Jerry Tarkanian, the UNLV coach. Further, quote, most of the night, though, it was unclear whether the stage was the Thomas and Mack or the Laurel and Hardy Center.
Wow.
End quote. That says a fair bit. The Suns' Larry Nance fractured the ring finger on his right hand, attempting to dunk an offensive rebound, and he would sit out all games through November.
Now, there was no recap in the Chicago Tribune, just a box score. Jordan had 28, as you mentioned, Pippen 20, and Horace had 4 points. Oakley didn't dress for the game at Doug Collins' request to give more playing time to Mike Brown and Horace Grant. He also tried Brad Sellers at centre, who responded with 1 defensive rebound in 30 minutes. And they also cut the roster to 14 with the release of Scott Meents and Tom Sheehy.
Yeah, I don't know how you pronounce that.
It was reported on this day also that Inside Sports has the Bulls going 41-41 and finishing fourth that's a lot of fours, in the Central Division in their NBA preview. The Tribune were advertising the Bulls tip-off luncheon, where you could meet the team with tickets at just $25. On the 27th, with 4 preseason games remaining, Doug Collins plans on using more regular season rotations in preparation for the season opener. And on the following day, the 28th, Bob Sakamoto reported that Michael Jordan angrily stormed out of practice after what he saw as Doug Collins rigging the score in a team scrimmage. Jordan said he keeps the score in everything, and the score was 4-4. Collins had it at 4-3 with Jordan's team losing. It was the first time Collins had a player walk out of a practice. Jordan added he left to avoid saying something that he shouldn't. Jordan said afterwards he expected to be fined and his early exit would be covered in the papers in the following days in assessing the new uncertain relationship between Jordan and Collins.
Yeah, very interesting wrinkle there.
Bob Verdi brought up a good point the following day. With only 20 minutes to go and the score at 4-3 or 4-4, what were they using? A medicine ball? There was also talk on this day of the Bulls showing interest in Washington's Frankie Airball Johnson and also their lack of faith in friend of the show Sadal Threet as a point guard backup for John Macbeth Paxson.
That's a massive throwback you've done there to the 1993 season recap I think we did early on in this podcast existence. So die-hard listeners of the show, all 3 of you, will really enjoy that little throwback.
And it's a completely inaccurate throwback as well, which I still haven't apologised for.
No, I think you did.
Okay. Washington have told Frank Johnson that they will deal with his free agency after the Knicks decide in 3 days' time if they will match the offer sheet that Washington have given to Bernard King.
More on King shortly.
Sports Illustrated's Bruce Newman is in town to write a feature on Scottie Pippen, and Doug Collins rewarded his team's effort with a cancelled practice the night before.
On October 28, Chicago took on Cleveland at the Met Center in Bloomington, Minnesota, in front of 9,448 fans. The Cavs had a comprehensive victory, 113-99, and the Bulls were 2-4. For Chicago, Jordan had 29 points, Artis Gilmore 10 points, and Dave Corzine had 9. For Cleveland, Ronnie Harper, 25 points, 8 rebounds and 7 assists. Fantastic game from him. Brad Doherty had 22 points, Mark Price and Dal Curry, 13 points apiece. This was always going to be an uphill battle for the Bulls, who were outscored 38-21 in the first quarter. MJ had 4 points after 1. Further, MJ fell to the floor after hitting his head on a Cavs player's knee late in the second quarter. Before the game, Jordan was pressed about his dispute with Doug Collins following his walkout at practice in Chicago the day before. Quote, "Everybody tries to win, and this is a golden rule with me. I want to go out and win. There's nothing personal with me and Coach Collins, but to get to where I am today, I have to live by that rule." End quote.
Jordan's 29 and Artis's 10 had those 2 players as the only 2 Bulls in double figures for the game. Scottie Pippen had 7 points and Horace 8 in 34 and 22 minutes respectively. On the following day, the 30th, another day covering Jordan and Collins. Today describes the impromptu press conference that you just mentioned that had Collins kissing MJ on the cheek.
Michael, would you come here a second so we can kiss on TV here, please?
There we go.
Would you tell him everything is fine? Oh. Okay, we've kissed and made up now.
Following the team practice on October 29 at the Deerfield Multiplex, Jordan was quoted as saying, "I'm sorry for what happened, but because I'm such a strong competitor, I lost my head and walked out," end quote. Collins then said, quote, "This whole matter has been blown out of proportion, and if it were not for the fact that it was Michael Jordan who walked out, nobody would have paid any attention," end quote.
Very true.
Now on the 30th, Chicago versus New Jersey, this time at Charlotte Coliseum in North Carolina, in front of 11,666, saw the Bulls hold on for a 107-100 victory. They improved to 3-4. For Chicago, Jordan had a great game, 32 points and 8 assists. Johnny Paxson, 13 points, and Artis Gilmore, 12 points. For New Jersey, Ben Coleman, the Bulls' 1984 draft pick, who did not play for the Chicago Bulls, had 20 points, and Buck Williams had 19.
The Bulls have promised MJ that help is on its way, and these promises are becoming more of a reality every day, as Scottie Pippen shows that he is for real. A Pippen putback dunk of a missed Jordan jumper punctuated the Bulls' 107-100 win at the Charlotte Coliseum and a 3-4 preseason record.
Moving into November, the 1st of November, Associated Press reports on this day claimed that Cleveland's Brad Doherty, number 1 pick of the 86 draft, had not only added 10 pounds to lifting weights in the off-season, he'd also grown nearly an inch over the last year.
Wow.
Same day, it was reported that the Phoenix Suns would be dedicating their upcoming season to the memory of Nick Van Os, who tragically died in an August plane crash, and we did allude to this in the latter episodes of NB 87. Players will be wearing a circular patch inscribed with Van Os's uniform number, 30, on their game jerseys and warm-up suits. And further, the team will play a video tribute at the Suns' first home game, and a moment of silence will be observed.
Needless to say, in any future 87-88 highlights, I'll be keeping an eye out for the aforementioned number 30 patch on their jerseys or warm-ups. What an awesome little tidbit that was.
I'll also be doing the same in some of the newspaper stories, and if I do find anything, again, check that NB88 hashtag across most of social media. Now, on the 1st of November, Chicago versus Dallas, this time in Jordan's old territory, the Dean Smith Center in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, in front of 13,960, saw the Bulls have a 124-111 win over the Mavericks. The Bulls improved to 4-4. Jordan had a monster game, 36 points, including 17 in the third quarter, and he had 8 assists for good measure. Brad Sellers, 18 points, Charles Oakley, 15 points and 12 rebounds, and John Paxson had 14 points and 6 assists. For Dallas, Roy Tarpley, 20 points and 11 boards, Derek Harbour and Rolando Blackman, 18 points each, and Detlef Schrempf, 14 points. Now, in MJ's first 6 preseason games, he had a total of 7 assists. Doug Collins told his team that a good performance would mean they'd have the following day off. He was true to his word, as per Bob Sakamoto.
Since reconciling with Coach Collins, Michael Jordan has played his 2 best games, wrote Bob Sakamoto. 16 assists in 2 games after 7 total in the first 6 preseason games.
Whoops, sorry about that, stepped on your toes.
That's what we get for not reading each other's notes, which is how it has to be, by the way.
I agree.
Jordan had 36 points and 8 dimes in the Bulls' win. The chief beneficiaries of these assists were Sellers and Paxson, with Dave Corzine and Artis Gilmore also playing well. Those guys, plus Oakley and friend of the show Threet, made up the 7 players in double figures in the scoring column. Also on the first in the Tribune, Bob Sakamoto mentioned that if the Bulls can keep Michael Jordan happy with their new injection of youth and potential, the Bulls are in for a winter with very little discontent.
Now that's a very cool winter.
Very much so, and also a very cool play on words by the Sack.
Yeah, definitely. He's always great with his words, and it'd be great to get Bob Sakamoto on the show one day. I've tried to reach out to him a couple of times. He's just so far slipped through my grasp, but I'll keep trying.
Jordan expressed his willingness to take a lesser role for the team's success this year and pointed to his lower scoring outputs at North Carolina and the success that those teams had.
Good stuff all around there, mate. On the 2nd of November, Bernard King's preseason debut with his new team, the Washington Bullets, was a successful one. He scored 33 points in a 3-point win over the Cleveland Cavaliers. Bernard became a Bullet, that's a lot of Bs, after the Knicks failed to match Washington's offer sheet.
Still one of the cooler comebacks in NBA history, in my opinion.
Absolutely, mate.
Capped off with his 1991 starting All-Star nod, no less.
Love it.
On the 2nd, Bob Sakamoto wrote of the spark that returned to Artis Gilmore with his return to Chicago. He'd put in 8 weeks of conditioning in preparation for the season, which was apparently a first for him.
That's jarring when you're actually thinking about the length of his career to that point. Shows what talent he had, I guess.
He also added Scottie Pippen's play has dropped off in the last week after a fast start. Doug Collins said Scottie had floated by and needed to get back to competing. His next assignment was James Worthy of the Lakers in the Hall of Fame game in Springfield.
Wow.
GM Jerry Krause was busy at this time looking for another point guard, with John Macbeth Paxson the only true point on the team.
And speaking of that game at Springfield, on the 3rd of November, Chicago versus the LA Lakers in front of 9,265 at Springfield Civic Center in Massachusetts. It was dubbed the Hall of Fame game. And the Bulls had a 128-114 victory and improved to 5-4 and finished their preseason. For the Bulls, Jordan had another great game, 36 points on 12 of 19 from the field. Brad Sellers, 14 points. Oakley and Dave Corzine had 12 points and 9 rebounds each. And Tony White added 8 points. For the Lakers, James was most worthy with 31 points. AC Green had 18 points and 9 boards. Michael Cooper, Wes Matthews, and Jeff Lamp had 11 points apiece. Now, the Bulls' win broke the Lakers' 7-game preseason win streak. We won't go through all the individual stats. However, Jordan averaged 30 points exactly per game over the 9 preseason games.
The young Bulls trampled a watered-down version of the Lakers, who were without Magic and Kareem for this game. The great referee Earl Strom, during a timeout, said to Johnny Kerr on the sidelines, and I quote, "You've got a few athletes on this team."
I love that.
Jordan scored 36 through 3 quarters and said at the last term, Horace Grant had 16 points and 6 rebounds in just 15 minutes of play.
Wow, I didn't know he played that little minutes, and what a great output.
Before the game, the Bulls cut the squad back to 12 players after releasing Pete Myers and Doug Altenberger.
The Hall of Fame game concluded the preseason. The Boston Celtics, LA Lakers and Seattle SuperSonics finished with the league's best record of 7-1. The worst performed team was the New Jersey Nets at 1-7. On this date, November the 4th, the South Florida Sun-Sentinel reported that the, quote, Miami Heat is 2,500 season ticket sales short of the NBA's required 10,000 for the city to be awarded its expansion franchise.
God, that's amazing.
7,500 of the 11,000 fans who deposited $95 have fulfilled their obligation and paid at least 50% of the full amount for the 88-89 season tickets.
Well,
according to the league, the franchise must sell 10,000 season tickets by December 1, end quote. Now, this was one of the stipulations of being awarded the franchise.
That's excellent support from the Miami locals.
Yeah, I know. And I've read something saying that the extended county around Miami, for lack of a better word, was something like 4 million. So to have such a vast population, to not actually have enough to get the 10,000 required by at least a particular date was quite startling, I would have thought. But clearly things did change, but it was looking a little bit dicey there for a while. Miami dice. On November the 5th, mate, this was the Bulls tip-off luncheon. And there's a great photo that you uncovered from the Chicago Tribune, which, again, look for the NB88 hashtag. You'll see the aforementioned Michael Jordan, Charles Oakley, and Scottie Pippen, who were, well, you tell us a bit more, mate. They were doing something to do with the 1988 All-Star Game promotion.
Yeah, the 3 of them were the only 3 Bulls that were on the ballot for the All-Star Game that year, and the 3 of them did a ceremonial vote.
Scottie first. A rookie on the ballot is unusual. Scottie has had an obvious rise in his basketball life, both in physical stature and in his play. Did you ever in your wildest dreams in Central Arkansas a year ago think you would be standing here with your name on an all-star ballot?
Well, no, I'm just glad just to get the opportunity to be able to play in the NBA, and also this opportunity for me to get a chance to get my name on the ballot, you know, to have a chance or opportunity to get into the all-star game, and I just want to thank the league and everyone for it.
Well, last year Charles rolled out all-star numbers rebounding-wise. He had over 1,000 rebounds and led the league in that department in terms of total rebounds. So, Charles, now you have an opportunity, perhaps, to play in an all-star game.
Hello. First, I'd like to say hello. Well, I would like to play last year, but I didn't have enough votes. So this year, my name back on there, so I hope to get some votes. I don't like just see my name on the ballot every year. So I hope all y'all get together and give me some votes. And I would like to play an all-star game once in my life. And I hope this be the year because it's in Chicago, so I can really show. Thank you.
As has been mentioned, Michael, of course, led everybody in voting last year and set a record in the process. 1,141,733 votes were cast for Michael Jordan.
If I can stand throughout the half of the season without being hurt, I will be back for the dunking contest again. I'm glad it's in Chicago, so I won't have to work quite as hard. I think the fans are going to enjoy it. It's a fun weekend, and I'm very proud that I had the chance to do it 3 years and hopefully get the chance to do it my 4th year.
Now, on the 6th of November, David Robinson, the number 1 pick of the 87 draft, signed a contract with the San Antonio Spurs for a reported $24 million minimum over 8 years. Associated Press articles reported that 700 fans attended the news conference that welcomed the Admiral aboard the Spurs franchise. Said Robinson, quote, "I have one of the best contracts. As far as pay goes, I guess there might be some people around with more total money or something like that, but I'm happy with the contract," end quote. I'd be pretty happy too.
Yeah.
He was given a standing ovation after being handed his Spurs number 50 jersey. Robinson wouldn't lace him up for the Spurs until the 89-90 season due to his 2-year Navy service commitment.
Friend of the show, Rick Barry, never one to speak his mind, said that Bulls rookie Scottie Pippen is Hall of Fame material.
Rick's on the money. Rick was one of the commentators, along with the great Bob Neal, in the aforementioned Hall of Fame game that we just covered, mate.
And as I mentioned before, Pippen is also on the All-Star ballot for the game to be played in Chicago in February of 1988. He got his first vote early when Michael Jordan cast his ceremonial vote before the tip-off luncheon. That's a pretty sweet first vote to get.
Yeah, he'd be pretty happy with getting MJ to sign up and say he'll vote you in. Now, a Kent McDill article that appeared in the Northwest Herald in Woodstock, Illinois, said that the team had sold a, quote, remarkable 11,200 season tickets for the Chicago Stadium, which has a capacity of just over 17,000, end quote. And just to round out the episode, mate, the Bulls' opening day roster for 87-88 included Michael Jordan, Charles Oakley, Brad Sellers, John Paxson, Artis Gilmore, Dave Corzine, Scottie Pippen, Sadale Threatt, Horace Grant, and Tony White. Gone from the opening day of the previous season, Steve Coulter, Earl Curitan, Granville Waiters, and Mike Brown.
On the day of the Bulls season opener on November 7th, Michael Jordan got his special, and I quote, little boy haircut and a pre-game meal. Charles Oakley pumped some iron, and John Macbeth Paxson got a good night's rest, wrote Bob Sakamoto. A friend of the show, Sadale Threatt, who played with Charles Barkley in Philly, had told Oakley that Charles Barkley wants to grab every rebound. He won't get every rebound when I'm around, retorted Oakley. A standing room only crowd is expected to be on hand to see if this team can meet its high expectations for the season. It starts the season with 4 rookies on the roster in Pippen, Grant, Tony White and Ricky Winslow, and Corzine and Artis are the only 2 players with 5 or more years experience.
An intriguing mix of players, really, isn't it, with youngsters and then older veterans. So, mate, that wraps up NB 88, Episode 1. Thanks again for being a part of the show, as always. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show, and share my web address with your friends and colleagues, inallairness.com. Check out the podcast archive for plenty more episodes with high-profile guests. Follow me on Twitter at inallairness. Please add your like to the show's social hub, facebook.com/inallairness. Join me next time for another edition of the show.
On August 10, it was...
September 10?
Is it?
Yeah, it's September.
I think I actually need to start writing the months down on these numbers because I always lose track of which month we're talking about. On September 7, Michael Jordan...
October.
I said September just before. Just on September 6th, there you go, you can cut that back in.
Wasn't it October 6th?
Shit, you did it again.